I'm going to pose a question for you guys as you're watching this video. Should they nerf Byzantium? I played Byzantium and I expected a rather difficult campaign, being that in EU4 they're very difficult, but that was not the case in EU5. And I'm going to walk you through my experience. I can tell you that the Ottomans and Byzantium, rather than feeling like Byzantium's very weak and Ottomans are very strong, they feel like they're similarly powerful, but Byzantium has the edge. You can also check out Lord Lambert's video. We have a little bit of a different playstyle, and his video is a lot more of a narrative than mine, which I think is kind of neat. And just remember, guys, I have a little bit of a different opinion than Lord Lambert, and that's totally cool. And this is going to be based off me playing the Ottomans one time and me playing Byzantium one time. Simply put, when I played Byzantium, I had an easier time than when I played the Ottomans, partially because the Ottomans have to deal with Egypt a lot sooner, and Egypt is a very scary guy. Before we get into the gameplay, I did want to mention I'm going to leave a link to Lord Lambert's video in the description. And again, if you guys want to see a different player tackle the same run or a similar run, I would recommend checking that out. Also, if you guys are going to pre-order EU5, consider using code Playmaker, or I will use a link below that you can use. It's a great way to support your favorite creator, whether that's me or somebody else. With that out of the way, let's get into our AAR. We start with 10% inflation, as well as about 90 ducats in debt, with a balance of 4 ducats. And we're not allowed to tax anyone, really. We can tax the peasants a little bit, but there's a lot of bad privileges that you start with. One of them has like -20 morale, which is kind of like EU4. And something to take note of is that we started as an empire, which is really, really powerful and pretty unique. I don't think there's many empires that exist in the game start, but this gives us extra cabinet actions. So let's say that as, for example, Brandenburg, you'd start with 2 cabinet members, and these guys start with 4. I believe the Ottomans start with 3, so you're even, stronger than the Ottomans. The Ottomans get to 4, but it takes them a little bit of time. I don't really have a plan, necessarily, when I'm coming into this campaign, other than probably I should go after the Ottomans at some point, because that's what Byzantium really does. So one thing to know is that we only start with 10 legitimacy, and this more or less means that we don't want, or we can't grant away privileges. In this build, they made it so it costs 5 legitimacy. I don't know if it was like that in other builds. It might have been, but I feel like it wasn't. So immediately when we start the game, you get a -20 stab drop for the Rise of the Turks, which is a situation with the Ottomans. And just for context, I played the Ottomans to about 1500, so I have a good feel of how they feel in contrast. And I think it's something that I actually played pretty recently. We get an offer for alliance with Serbia, so we say, sure, why not? So early on, we get an earthquake in Constantinople, and it's not really that bad, but, Earth prosperity, sure, things like that. Now, one thing to know about my inflation, and if you guys have watched Lord Lambert's video, I'll link it in the description, but we have a very different approach. You start with a bunch of inflation, I think 9% inflation. I noticed when I watched this video, he prefers to get that inflation tick down. I, on the other hand, don't really care. I just kind of say inflation is just a number. And I just immediately mint to the max I can. Not the max that you literally can, but to the max that I'm not gaining any more inflation. So you kind of get your inflation modifier at like, 0% increase a month. I delete every 4, including the one in Constantinople, which, again, not everyone's going to want to do this. And then I also pick a law, which makes it so are blocked from trading gold and silver, but you generate more, or you get more from minting. And all this is to say that when deleting the forts, minting, and picking the certain laws, I'm immediately able to be making at least 10 a month, which is quite handy. This is a lot of money. So being in 90 ducats of debt, you can see that's kind of nothing compared to like me making 10 a month, right? Like the debt is gone in 9 months. Just for some perspective on kind of how that situation, the same situation feels. There's a gold mine here, I want to say, that you can upgrade a bunch. One thing to note, though, is you start with a bunch of unintegrated land. I believe it's like 4 areas that are not integrated. So I just give these to subjects because that's my integration style. If you guys have watched my other videos, that's something that I always do. So again, I'm just kind of like giving away, I think it's some land over here. So I'm just kind of like giving away like a couple different subject areas so they can integrate for me, which will free up my cabinet actions to do other things. So again, not knowing what I'm really doing, I kind of look around at fighting the Ottomans because Parliament pops up in 1339, which is, 2 years into the campaign. And I see that the Ottomans have no allies. I want to mention a strange part of the game before we go any further. It is 1339, but I did want to note that as an empire, you have to rival 4 people. So you have to have 4 rivals. And you can't rival the Ottomans because you can only rival a kingdom plus. So it's like really awkward. You have to like rival like Naples and like, I think I rival like England and France. So it's like really bizarre in comparison to like who you'd actually want to attack because you're an empire. no one else around you is even a kingdom to understand. I think Egypt is probably an empire kingdom, but and I think it rivals to Egypt. But my point being is that your nation rank is so high above most everyone in the game. Austria is 2 government ranks behind you. Just to give you an idea of how powerful, like it's very, very powerful to be an empire. So that's kind of what part of what makes Byzantium so strong. And they don't even meet the conditions to be an empire, so I don't know how I feel about that. Like, you have to have like 5 million pops of your culture to become an empire later in the game, and it's just interesting that Byzantium's given such strong modifiers for free. But like, anyways, that's not my point. But we'll move on from that. One thing to note is that we have a 200 stack of professional troops. So I just look at the Ottomans and I see that it's a war that the game thinks I should win. I'm not like reinventing the wheel, right? The game says that I should win. It shows that I would have more levies than they do. I have Serbia as an ally, and I have a couple subjects that would help. So it's really not this crazy hard war to declare, right? So anyways, just to declare on the Ottomans with Parliament CB, declare on them. And what we do, we accidentally kind of abuse the game. And I didn't really mean to do this. It's just kind of like the most obvious path. So my plan was like send my guys to the capital and then, spawn a bunch of levies in different places, whatever they would spawn, and then reinforce that stack that is going to start sieging his capital fort. Now, unintentionally, this breaks the game because I get to his capital fort and now he can't recruit the levies because that's where they would recruit. So it actually makes this war like stupid easy. I actually went back and tried this again later, and it doesn't really matter. It's still, you still outnumber him and it's an easy war. But basically, this war becomes like actually, it's just something that I wanted to mention because I guess I feel like levies should be a little bit reworked in the sense that, I occupy his capital, and I think that represents like 90% of his levies. And so because I got there before they did, then he can't even recruit levies, essentially. I think that he was able to recruit 2,000 levies, where I'm able to recruit 11,000 levies because I stopped 5,000 of his levies. But again, even if I didn't stop 5,000 of his levies, you would see that I still have 11,000 versus 7,000. And that doesn't include Serbia, who's very willing to help me. So my point being is that it's super easy to beat the Ottomans, which I don't like. And I think part of the issue is that the Ottomans need time to kind of like build up, right? They have that event. And because you can attack them so soon, they're just not able to build up. Again, I'm not a developer. I'm not here to tell you guys what I think should be the case or how I think they should change it. But I will say that it feels like the Ottomans are very weak compared to Byzantium. So without going into too much detail, we're essentially just going to draw the borders of roughly the land that we take in the first war. I did want to mention that I get a civil war during the war. So I get again, my legitimacy is really low. I'm trying to boost it, but unfortunately I get a pretender that will eventually lead to a civil war. One thing about my playstyle that's like super overpowered is not having forts makes rebels really, really easy. I just like to save money. I'm not doing this intentionally to stop rebels. I just like having more money, and I don't really think forts are needed because I'm going to be the aggressor as the player. That's just my playstyle. I do this in EU4 as well. I usually delete most or all the forts. So I intentionally break alliance right after this war with Serbia because I want to attack Serbia. So just to note, that's kind of like I've dropped my alliance here, and I have to deal with the civil war that's going to happen. And I want to mention something with the civil war that makes it extremely easy, unintentionally. What makes this really easy is that there's like 2 provinces up here that defect that I have to deal with. And obviously these 2 don't even have forts, so it's a super easy rebellion to deal with. But the point of me saying this is that I have raised my levies. So I have like all my levies raised because I'm trying to deal with this little rebellion. And then literally 2 months later, the civil war happens. Why this is broken, I guess you could say, is because I already have my levies raised. And let's say that like the defection kind of looks like this, where like a bunch of this defects and a bunch of this defects. But I don't have forts, as I said, and I have all my guys raised that are like already in the territories where the rebellion's happening. So essentially, I just set carpet siege to all my guys, and the civil war is over within like 3 months. I imagine this isn't the intent. And again, it's not like I'm trying to abuse the systems or anything. It's just not having forts is really overpowered for rebels, and honestly for economy too. But again, it's just one of those things that's like, I don't like forts, and it also has an unintentional problem of being insanely strong for dealing with rebels. So we've done our initial war, and we dealt with this civil war situation. It wasn't very difficult. The Black Death fires, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not saying that you should avoid the Black Death and not care about it like I do, but for those that watch my EU4 channel, I just don't really care to micro the Black Death because I don't really feel like it makes much of a difference if I do or don't. So again, I just kind of let the Black Death happen. I don't really do anything to change the outcome or in any way. I literally don't interact with it in any way whatsoever. I mean, I lose a bunch of population, but what I'm saying is that you probably could, like, it would save you some population, and there is value in dealing with it. I'm just going to say that I'm lazy. And I'm not saying that that's good. I'm just saying that that's people that watch my channel kind of know that I'm, I tend to be lazy in some aspects of the game. One thing I want to know, and going along with this kind of I'm a bit lazy, is that I always automate trade. And that's just what I do in every campaign. Just always, right when the game starts, click on automate trade and leave that the way it is for the rest of the campaign. That being said, I will build trade buildings to help with my trade income, but I'm not like gonna, be like super min-max and do all that. So moving on past that, just want to mention a couple things that we end up doing. We want to get rid of these really bad privileges. And so the nobility one costs 107 stab to get rid of. So one thing I want to test here is I want to take the land from Athens, because in EU4 there's like an Athens reclaimed event, so I was kind of just curious. So anyways, go ahead and go to war here. And what the Athens reclaimed event does is it gives plus 50 integration, or like 50% integration to like a bunch of provinces in this area. So it just kind of makes this really easy to integrate. Not a huge event, but just something to note. So we're like roughly drawing like the land that we've taken. One thing to note too is that Epirus is really easy to integrate because they're your culture, so you get a plus 100% integration speed, just as a little bit of a side note. So yeah, extremely easy to integrate a lot of these lands too. And if you remember early game, I gave away a bunch of subjects in this area that you start unintegrated, and it's the same thing with them as well. They are Greek culture, so it's super, super easy to integrate these provinces as well. So you kind of, you're in a good spot for that. Every time we go to a war, we release all these little fiefdoms. I don't really know how fiefdoms work. I think it's like religion based, because I wanted to note this is that whenever I attack over here, I can make fiefdoms, but whenever I attack over here, I can only make vassals. So it might be tied to religion or something like this. I don't really know how that works. Again, I'm still learning a lot about the game and that sort of thing. Byzantium has one of the strongest abilities I've ever seen in the game. They have a cabinet action that's unique to Byzantium that just gives them 10% more manpower. And this is dependent on your cabinet's strength as well. So if you had really good cabinet efficiency, you could be gaining like 20% manpower, which is crazy. It's like, it's not going to be helpful like in the early game right now, but man, giving additional 20% manpower is just something that I'm like, that is nuts. I played like the Holy Roman Empire. I'm like, I can't imagine if you had 20% more manpower. I let my nation stabilize for a little bit. So 1380, I'm just kind of like, let's start getting aggressive, because I've annexed most of my subjects here and, integrated them in my nation and like over here as well. So I'm like, okay, it's time for a good bit of conquest. So I go to war with Serbia and I co-belligerate Bosnia. And this war is kind of difficult. And I'll explain to you why. Let's say I have 20,000 levies, roughly speaking. And so I split the levies into stacks of 10K. The problem is that like I don't have any forts, remember. So that's part of why this is difficult. And again, like that's self-inflicted. I have to defend my nation because I don't have any forts, but I also am trying to make progress in the war. So it's kind of difficult because again, I can't like just like go and siege up a bunch of stuff, because they're going to send guys in and like base race, and really they can take land really, really fast because I don't have forts again. So if they take the AI is very good at abusing you when you have no forts, which is good, I think. So there's definitely a trade-off to, deleting forts and that sort of thing. But the point being in this war is the war is kind of difficult, and I'm also kind of greedy, because the easy answer would be that I would get like Bulgaria out of the war early, for example. When you co-belligerate, it makes the stronger nation the war leader. So I think maybe I did declare in Serbia, but Bulgaria is actually the war leader, because this is how it works when you co-belligerate. So essentially, I want to get Serbia out of the war first. So that I want like a ton of land from both of them. So we've got a different screenshot just because we're of course invading Serbia and Bulgaria. Oh, and I didn't mention this. I don't know why I didn't mention this, but I did end up annexing the Ottomans in the second war. The war is just so easy and inconsequential, I just forgot to mention it. But by that point, we have annexed the Ottomans. We're with Serbia and Bulgaria. And we're having troubles making a lot of progress because of our lack of forts. But eventually, and again, this has a lot to do with the levy spam. So let's say we have 20,000 guys, but they just keep sending in like waves of 10K. And what I don't like about this scenario, like literally how the game works, is like they'll beat me down to the point where I'm at 7,000 guys or something. So what I'll end up doing though is like I will just disband my levies and recruit new levies as well. Like if they're gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, right? So it's like they'll get me down to like 7K guys, and I'll literally just disband all these guys so I can pick up a new fresh stack of, like maybe 18,000 guys or something, right? To me, I think that it should never be a strategy that you need to disband your levies so you can get a bigger stack of levies. I just don't feel like that's makes any sense. Would that ever happen in an actual war where, you like demobilize or, like basically get rid of all your armies so that you can somehow get more armies? Because that's kind of what happens that you have to do. You have to be like, oh, my levies are low, and levies don't replenish. It's just kind of like, oh, my levies have been beaten down. I'm going to disband all of them. I think there probably should be a replenishment system because, again, it's kind of just weird that that's the optimal strategy, right? Like, oh, I've been beaten down a lot. Let's just disband all my guys so I can get new guys. Like, I can get more guys. Anyhow, eventually, kind of what happens, I believe, is that we don't stack wipe their levies, and they end up just like retreating their levies or something. Because what happens eventually, they kind of just don't. They're not there anymore. I don't know what, like, it's almost like they, like, what I think happens is if you don't sack wipe the levy completely, then they have like 700 guys here and they can't re-recruit. Like when I was over here, I disbanded all my levies when they were kind of depleted. But I don't think the AI does this. So if you don't fully wipe out their stack, it's really, really obviously advantageous for you. So we did co-belligerent in this war. We actually were fighting Wallachia too, but we'll just wipe peace Wallachia just to take note of that. Just so you understand, Albania had been taken by Serbia at this point, and Venice also, I think, was taken by Serbia and Bosnia. So Serbia is kind of like quite a large nation at this point. They've definitely expanded more than they had at the start. There's so many forts, and we don't have anything that sieges down fort. Like I don't have any professional or I don't have cannons yet. This war, I end up getting 10 war exhaustion, which lowers your morale quite a bit, is I think the biggest penalty. And eventually I need to end the war, but of course I will peace out Serbia first, and I'm going to take like as much as possible. I'm going to take a ton of land in these wars, something like this. So obviously I've like massively expanded my nation from these wars. This war does take like a long ass time though because of the forts. So it's probably like, I think it ends up being like an 8-year war or something like that. And again, we have crazy high war exhaustion at the end. But I think weirdly enough, I actually take something like this. I remember taking like a weird, just the way the war score worked, I was able to take like land above Bulgaria. And so, but there's like this little gap of the land that he still owns that you can see. I hesitate to say this because, it's my secret cheat code, and Johan might watch this. And if he is watching this, so listen, it's not that OP, okay? It's fine. We have 0.01% Johnny over here. So naturally, we're of course going to swap our religion to Crits Johnny. But it's not OP, guys. Listen, it's not OP, Johan. I think that I'm unfortunately going to get this nerfed by using it every game. But anyways, right, we swapped to this new religion. There's the negative consequence of this is that every one of my subjects is going to be different than my religion. They're like all Orthodox, right? And we make 30 subjects or whatever over here. Everything's a subject over here, right? Like I don't personally own any of this land. But I have integrated like all of this and like this, et cetera, right? So I'll explain to you what this religion does. Every 10 religious influence, they can press a button that gives you 10 towards humanist, but also 10 towards conciliatory. And you can use this button roughly every like 8 years because you get 0.1 a month. So anyways, this religion allows you to roughly every 8 years move towards humanist by 10 and conciliatory by that. So what's good about conciliatory is that gives you Dipper rep. I believe you get 5 at max, but it also gives you 10 cabinet efficiency, and it also gives you loyalty of subjects. I think like 10 loyalty or something, right? So it's like really, really good for subject gameplay, but it also helps with our cabinet, so we're even better at culture conversion. So it's essentially, you can think of this religion as a cheat code to getting max humanist, which is like having max CCR. But my fear is that they're going to nerf this religion because I go at every game now. But if they're not watching the video, maybe it'll be safe because I haven't heard any other creator talk about this religion ever. Like who goes this weird religion? I never even heard of this religion. And so like maybe the devs aren't watching and it'll be safe. And like no one else has talked about this but me, I feel like. Have you guys seen any other creator talk about this religion? The point being is that this religion isn't something that you even necessarily need to keep in the long term. And I don't. Like basically think of this as a religion that you're just going to swap to acquire max CCR, and then you can switch to Protestant because Protestant's the best religion in the video game for my playstyle. The reason why I think it's the best in the video game is because it deletes rebels from existence. Like you just, if you go Protestant, you don't get rebels anymore. So it's like insane. So don't nerf that either. Wasn't like journalists saying like Sunnis what needs to be nerfed, right? Slaves and all that. Yeah, get rid of that. Christianity is fine. Just because I want to go to every game doesn't mean anything wrong. You use the religion for 80 years to max humanist, and then you can just go to Lutheran when it pops up. I should mention before we switch to this religion that the Pope asks us if we want to go Catholic, and I say sure. So we get an event from the Pope that's like, hey, you want to go Catholic? And I'm like, sure, man. And then from there, I'm just like, you know what's really better than this whole Catholic thing is this other religion that I want to be. And by the way, even though my subjects are always the wrong religion than me, for whatever reason, I can just force convert them and they're still happy with me. So even though that I lose like 100, it says I lose 100 liberty, like, you know, you gain 100 liberty desire, it doesn't matter. All my subjects are just always happy with me regardless. And, you know, I eventually force them all to my secret religion, and they probably like are happy because they love that religion too. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. You're making me switch to the best religion in the video game. And so my subjects are generally pretty loyal from that point on. Also, one thing I didn't mention is like early on, we just expand this gold mine to max because, you know, I don't know if I need to explain further why we did that, but yes, gold is valuable. I know it's a hot take. One thing also is that we're going to have to use Parliament to save ourselves 300 stability, which is, I'm not like making that number up. Like that's what happens. Because in Parliament, we are going to change 3 laws. And normally this would be 300 stability, but it's free because of Parliament. And the reason we're changing those laws is because we need to make sure that we're actually pushing towards humanist, right? Because we by default, we're not on humanist. So we have to switch our, I believe it's like the religious laws. Like you have to change it so your heir can be any religion. And, you know, you're kind of making you're like drastically changing your nation's like viewpoint on the whole religious versus humanist stance. And I think this should be a lot more punishing, like destabilizing. Like basically you're telling your nation that like, yeah, we don't care about religion anymore. And this isn't destabilizing at all. It's one parliament. I think I lose 7 stability because I actually fell parliament, but that usually happens anyways. Like I don't really care about what we're debating in parliament. I usually just pick the highest percentage option, and that's again that's generally something that the nobles are going to be doing because the nobles have the most influence. The nobles will almost already start with like 50% towards the issue. So you almost already can like the second that you call parliament and you pick a nobility one, you can generally pass something like instantly, and then you know pick a couple things that they want depending on you know what they are and that sort of thing. The point being is that we're able to drastically change our laws towards humanist, and we're going to be pushing towards humanist because you know our coring style is that we're going to annex our subjects, but then we're going to have to culture convert those provinces so we can actually core them fully. And you know, just to note some things about economy is that we're going to build bailiffs everywhere because we want control everywhere. And generally speaking, we get around 40 control in every province that we own that is outside of our kind of capital region, right? Obviously, our capital region has a lot more control than that. We're pushing roads, and you know, we're pushing cities, and cities get more, and then we're going to build temples in that. But again, I don't need to get too much into the economy, other than to say that bailiffs are the most built building that we have in our nation, and we try to have these in every province that we own. We also destroy any cities that are too far away because they can't build bailiffs, and therefore their control will be worse. So if essentially my rule is that if the control is less than what the bailiff would give, then I'll delete the city and kind of, you know, move it into a bailiff rural area. And I do note that one thing I need to really start doing is that there's a law that if you have 50 serfdom, you can get another 5 max control for rural settlements, which is like most of my land. So I should probably start doing this more. I just don't push serfdom hard enough usually. You have to have 50 serfdom to pick the law. But anyways, that's just a thought for something I want to implement in future runs. Moving on. There's like 3 nations that own a majority of the land now down here. So I'm kind of just drawing on the colors that they are. And I don't know exactly what the borders were, but I'm just going to give you a rough estimation. So there's 3 nations that own the rest of the land here. And it's something like this. But the point being is that we're going to go ahead and now go to war with this nation. And it's not going to be a very hard war. And also in the war, we're going to make these guys into with Egypt so that we can come back and fight them later because, you know, we don't really want that to happen. But something happens in this war that's really weird is that I take like a bunch of land like this. Well, I pretty much just annex like most of the you know the land down here, kind of in this like black box I'm dragging here, right? And I don't realize this, but a lot of this is my cores, so I don't even have to like give away to subjects. I only end up having to give like a little bit of the land over here to subjects. Like this is all my cores, and it becomes like immediately it's just like, you know, I just get insane value out of this, like on accident. Unexpected surprise. Before I make these subjects, I actually end up like integrating all this land here. So all of this land is now my land. And so I'm going to use every single cabinet action from this point until the end of my campaign, which, I mean, so far I've played until about 1505, integrating culture. And remember, every 8 years, I get another plus 10% towards humanist. By the time that the 1500s hit, I'm going to be max humanist and max conciliatory. So I'm like insanely good at culture converting by the 1500s. And when I'm saying insanely good, I mean like, I don't even know how, but we're able to culture convert a nation to 50% of our culture in like a year or 2. It's insanely fast. I'm using all my subjects to integrate land, but I'm actually culture converting so fast that like my subjects are behind in giving me the land. if that makes sense. Like, I'm so damn efficient at it that it's, like, hard to keep up with. But I had this weird scenario where I was at 99.9%, and there's one Bulgarian that, like, is a stubborn Bulgarian, right? And he just will not culture convert. I don't know why. And just to give you guys some numbers, I know we're kind of jumping ahead to the end of the campaign, but anyways, so we've annexed everyone except for this blue nation, which does own both of these, like, areas, right? Like, he owns all of this stuff. But as far as, like, everyone else, it's just, like, me and him, and then obviously, like, Egypt, and I think they ran into a subject of whoever the horde guy is over here. So I could go and declare on them later and that sort of thing. But by 1505, we've integrated all of our subjects. So we have no subjects. And we also are the cultural hegemon. So now we have integrate area. And we're also the middle hegemon. So we're double hegemon. And we are 95% culturally unified, which, to give you some numbers, we end up at the end of our run, we end up with 7.8 million total population. And of that, 7.5 million are Greek, which of course means that our nation is not very prone to rebels too, right? Because we're very culturally unified and that sort of thing. And again, this has a lot to do with the religion that we are, being that we're able to max our humanist before. It's kind of funny because I can max my humanist before the Age of Reformation, which the Age of Reformation is actually a tool to help you do this. But of course, I'm already maxed before that age even begins. And surely they won't nerf that religion, okay, guys? There's no way. There's no chance that they nerf that religion because no one's ever heard of it. Now, I just wanted to talk about a topic that people seem to, it seems to interest people is how strong then is Byzantium? So I would say that of the nations that I've played, they would probably rank. It's hard because I played England on very hard settings, so I'm not going to include them as a in the rankings of kind of like ease. But I do want to say that I played the Ottomans till about the same time, and I think that Byzantium is better, like stronger. The Ottomans are, but to be fair, I think the Ottomans will be better later because of their really insane 10% control modifier globally. But I do think that Byzantium has kind of a stronger snowball because they start with a lot higher population than the Ottomans do. And when I say that, it's just like literally they start with more levies than the Ottomans by quite a bit, right? So you get like 11K versus 7K as the Ottomans. So again, you just start with more troops, and that makes it so you can snowball easier. And of note, the things I didn't include are Byzantium have like the best infantry that I've ever seen in the video game. It's insane. Their early game infantry is cracked. Of every nation I played, they have the best infantry in the early game. I don't know why they're given the best infantry in the game, but their infantry early game is insane. I say that the Ottomans are better than Byzantium. It's more like they're equivalent, but Byzantium starts stronger and the Ottomans snowball harder. Mostly it's just because of their government reform they're given that gives you plus 10% max control. So it's not like they're way better or something like that, but definitely stronger. To that extent, I have to consider the manpower bonus though that those guys get. That's crazy. So maybe I'm wrong about that because they have that ability to get like 20% free manpower. But I guess my point being is that they're very similar. And to me, the story of Byzantium is generally the idea of kind of like a really weak, rags to riches type of gameplay, and it does not feel like rags to riches. It feels like riches to riches. If you want a true difficult experience, try playing Brandenburg. And literally the game will tell you in the nation selector, Byzantium's a hard nation, Brandenburg's a very hard nation. Again, this is one opinion based off one sample size. Maybe I got lucky. Who knows, right? Just saying, I only played Byzantium a single time. I don't know if I got good RNG or if I got bad RNG because, you don't really know that until you play the nation a couple times. There's just a lot of things that make the Byzantium really rich, though. They start with a really nice gold mine. And if you increase control in this gold mine too, man, you're just giga rich, right? Like, it's just like, I think they start with a bad scenario. It's just so easy. Make that scenario not bad. Like, all you got to do is like delete your forts and, deck on the Ottomans in the first 2 years and you're kind of set. I guess what I would like to see is that they should nerf Byzantium. I know people are going to freak out about that, but I do think that they should nerf Byzantium because I kind of like the place they are. Maybe they don't need to be as bad as they are in EU4, but I do like the idea of an EU4 when you start off with a really weak nation and then you're able to really, thrive, and that feels like an accomplishment. It doesn't really feel like an accomplishment to take a Byzantium empire and then make them into a bigger Byzantium empire. It's just not as satisfying as it would be in EU4, which is fine. I'm not saying that's like bad. I'm just saying like, they're not the same nation as they are in EU4. They're really, really strong. So, and just to give you some context, I played Milan recently. because I wanted to sack war score cost, and I think they're the best nation to do that. I mean, that's not really the point of what I'm saying, but my point is in saying is that Byzantium was definitely stronger than Milan. To give you some context, and when I say stronger, I mean quite literally, I was able to become a great power sooner in my game than I was as Milan. Same with the Ottomans. Like I was able to become a great power as Byzantium earlier in the game than I was as the Ottomans. If any of that matters to you, that's just some statistics from my runs. And again, that could be a lot of different factors that attribute to that. But in general, if I was to rank the last 3 campaigns that I played, which would be Byzantium, the Ottomans, and Milan, I would probably put Milan at the bottom, the Ottomans second, and then Byzantium as the strongest of the 3.